From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell, and this week we are at the home of cricket, Lords in St John's Wood in North London, a very special ground. I've done a number of Stumped episodes where I'm here because I'm about to cover a test match and I'm usually up in the media centre. Well, we're in the clock tower at the moment, looking across to the Mound stand, which is where I, as a 13-year-old, came to watch my first ever international at Lords. And then in 2003, as a 23-year-old, covered my first ever test match here, England against South Africa. So it's a ground which holds a lot of significance for me. More importantly, I've got my two co-hosts in person alongside me.
Jim Maxwell for the ABC here at Lords. Of course, everyone who follows Test cricket will know that this is not only the spiritual home of cricket, but it's one of Australia's favourite grounds. For those of you who may not recall, they didn't lose a test match here between 1934 and 2009. So I feel at home.
Hi, and this is Sunil Gupta for Akashvani, also at Lords. And like Helen of Troy, whose face launched 1,000 ships, it launches 1,000 memories for me and 1,000 legends. And of course, the biggest one being India winning that World Cup in 1983, and Kapil Dev holding up the trophy. That was the big moment, I think, that turned Indian cricket around and said, yes, we can compete at the highest level. So I think from that point of view, it is not just the home of cricket, but in a sense, it is the home of Indian cricket, where Indian cricket really started to flower and flourish.
I'll tell you what, it's brilliant to be here with you both. I know we are delighted that you've been able to join us. Fortuitously, wasn't it? Because you've actually been here watching the World Test Championship final. Jim and I were both working. You were watching. How did you enjoy it?
Well,
in a sort of perverse way, because I know the result didn't go your way.
Well, of course, the atmosphere at an English Test ground with the crowds, and of course largely Indian, and all the boisterousness and all that's happening is an experience by itself, especially seeing a 5-day Test match as opposed to a one-day international or a T20 game. So it was enthralling. It was very hot, I might say so. Obviously, the ending left much to be desired. I still felt that we had a chance on that last day. I think we didn't perform the way that we should have performed, because at the end of the day, it is the World Test Championship. It's not just another test match. But it was an experience that I wanted to have, because who knows when that opportunity might come again. So I made the effort and I came, and here I am sitting at Lords with Mr. Jim Maxwell and Miss Alison Mitchell. And what more could a man want at this stage in his life?
Jim, did you feel that match at the Oval, which is just in south of the river from where we are here in North London, did it feel like an occasion?
It certainly had that feel. It was a bit of spot the Aussie on the first day. There didn't seem to be a lot of Australians in the crowd. But India's disappointment at the way they played against Australia's joy because of that extraordinary partnership, really, which set it all up between Head and Smith on the first day after Australia had been sent in. So it was a championship performance by the Australian side. Lots of discipline about the way they went about their bowling, their batting. Well, it had its moments, as I said, and I think the quiet authority of the captain probably helped them get through and set the game up so nicely on the last day. But as a test match, and I think you got to retain a little bit of objectivity here, this was a superb, absorbing game of cricket. And if test matches are always like that between two pretty well-matched sides, then Test cricket's got a long life.
Those of you watching on YouTube will have noticed that Sunil, Jim and I have been joined by a very special guest. We are delighted that Justin Langer, the former Australia opener and coach, has joined us. Welcome, JL. Good to see you. Lords then, I mean, when you come here, what memories does it stir in you?
I always feel that when you walk into the long room, it's the strangest. It's almost like the old grandfather's old embrace, and they say, welcome home, welcome back. And then the dining room. The dining room's like a 7-star restaurant. And it had to be very careful because the food was so good. And the people, and I've just got, I've had some amazing battles here, county cricket and international cricket. And it's just a magical place to be.
Lovely place, yes. I first came here as a youngster and saw Bob Massey take 16 wickets in a test, and I don't think I've ever seen swing bowling like it in my life. I don't think I will again. You know, bowling around the wicket and moving the ball late to left-handers and right-handers, they didn't have a clue. And a bloke called Lilly at the other end, that helped a fair bit. So long memories. Broadcast down at the other end in 1983 in the World Cup back then. So, yeah, it is the heart and soul of the game around the world. It's always wonderful to come here. It's still a quirky ground, I think you'd say. Every Australian who first sets eyes on it said, how can you have 8 feet going from left or right down the hill or whatever? It's ridiculous. But that's what it is, and that's what gives it the character, the flavour, and the history. So it's wonderful to be here, even though there's no whacking of the ball on the bat at the moment. Here we are. Special place.
Yes, actually, very much for us in India, certainly me. You go back in history, and it's like King Arthur and his round table, and Lords and cricket. You know, it's very, very similar to that. And of course, my first memory is not being here, of course, but watching India win that 1983 World Cup. Right, we saw it on television, and that was really when the first time colour television came in, and you saw a couple there holding that cup up there on the balcony and stuff like that. It was a very big moment. And then the next time was 1999 when Australia played Pakistan in the final. You will remember that, Justin, and absolutely demolished Shane Warne. I mean, he was unplayable.
First time I come here, I was 16 years old as a schoolboy, and I played on the nursery ground, scored 100 on the nursery ground.
No way.
I don't remember anything about the cricket, but I remember there used to be a red phone box, the English telephone box, in between the Lords, and I ran around and I rang my mum and dad reverse charge call, which a lot of people got no idea what I'm talking about, but reverse charge, and I rang my mum and
It means
dad.
your mum and dad are not pleased to get that phone call because it's going to cost
No,
them
that's
a
right, it
fortune.
cost them a fortune back then, but they were pleased because I said, Mum and Dad, I've just got 100 at Lords. And I'll never forget, it was like the music that came through from my mum and dad. They were so proud of me. And that's sort of driven me all the way through. When I became coach of Australia, the 3 words were make Australians proud. And that came from that memory of this red telephone box here. And it was sort of a pivotal moment in wanting to become a professional cricketer. To play at Lords and to eventually play on the main ground was an incredible privilege.
If you had to think of maybe your best memory of being a test player here then, on field, I mean, it might be your worst memory if I go back to 2005 and the start of that Lords test when you're being peppered by Steve Harmison.
well, actually, there's something that a lot of people don't recognise, and you should watch it when the Lords test comes on. It's different to every other ground I ever played on, and I was lucky to face the first ball of the Ashes in 2005. Harmison's at the pavilion end. His heart's pumping, my heart's pumping. And I'm batting up. And what generally happens is the bowler runs in to bowl the first ball and the crowd starts roaring. You can hear the whistling and you can hear the shouting and you can hear the banging. And it's sort of like infectious because you're getting the adrenaline and you're pumping. Come on, come on. And this time, though, Harmison starts and the whole crowd went silent. It is the most bizarre thing at Lords. The first ball is complete silence. And it was tangible. It was like deathly silent. And he runs in and it was like, this is weird because you could hear the silence, as stupid as that sounds. Anyway, Harmison runs in, bowls this first ball, flies past my nose. Geraint Jones takes it above his head. And I still remember Ian Bell, I think, was at bat pad where you are, and he starts walking towards me. The slips are starting to walk towards me. Harmison ends up about as close to me as this microphone. And Matty Hayden walks down and goes, mate, be ready, little fella. These guys are switched on. They're on. I said, yeah. And the next ball, I got hit on the elbow, and it blew up. Thankfully for adrenaline, I did not feel it. But adrenaline, and then that first hour... No, nothing. And then Matty Hayden got hit on the helmet, probably the first time I ever saw him get hit on the helmet. And then Ricky Ponting got hit under the eye, or this eye, and still bears the scar today. And that all happened in that first hour. It was the best hour of cricket I've ever played in. And I still remember, like 18 years later, I still remember the silent first ball. After that, everyone got loud again. But that silent first ball of law was the most weird experience.
Oh, I have to go back to the DVD and listen for the silence.
It's the strangest thing.
Yeah. And we've been speaking about Australia having won the World Test Championship final. I mean, the Ashes is now a different a different beast, isn't it, up against this England side? What's your instincts going to be about how the Aussies can combat the style that this England team are playing?
I was only watching. There's been a lot of talk about England are going to, Bazball theory. They're going to really attack Nathan Lyon. And I was commentating in the World Test Championship just a few days ago. I said, that's okay in theory, but it's not that easy in reality, because he is an outstanding spin bowler, and I think there's been no rain. It's been very dry here, and I can't help but think at Edgbaston first test, as it did last time we were here, it actually started spinning, and it's not easy, one, to play really aggressive cricket when the ball's spinning and you can still set a field. So that's one thing I'd say. The other thing is Scott Boland, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, or I imagine Josh Hazlewood, one of those two, and Cameron Green, the kid. That is a world-class bowling attack, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy just to come out and just tee off against great bowling. So I think there's that part of it. I think the other thing is there's been a lot about the wickets they might play on that might be really flat wickets. We'll see, to win a test, you've still got to take 20 wickets, and the crystal ball's wonderful, but whatever way, I think it's a mouth-watering Ashes series, and I, like 3 other cricket tragics here, cannot wait.
It has a lot of potential, so we'll be interested to see how well it goes. And particularly, I think Ben Stokes is fascinating because he's such an accomplished cricketer and a match winner and a talisman for the side. But there has to be a concern about his durability, 5 games in 7 weeks with that knee. And I really wonder, is he going to be able to bowl? If he does bowl, what damage will he do? I think there are a few iffy factors around the England side, and maybe Australia with the 36-year-old openers, but I think England have got to find a way to get their best, as Justin suggested, attack on the field to start the series. And from the sound of it, Moeen Ali might be part of that, but he's certainly got a poor record against Australia. Yes, a lot to think about. Can I just ask Justin a question? I want to know, what impresses you most about Pat Cummins as a leader?
I think, and it's one of the huge contests of this series, is the Stokes, go back to Ben Stokes versus Pat Cummins. The Australian philosophy has always been, you've got to get on top of the opposition captain. And then when I say that in England, I say, oh, that means you're going to sledge it. No, it's got nothing to do with that part of it. It's on skill. And I agree with Ben Stokes. If he's not bowling, it takes away one of his big weapons and his inspirations. If you remember back to Leeds last time, everyone remembers Ben Stokes' innings, but they forget his spell of bowling the day before. It was one of the greatest spells of bowling I've seen in Test cricket. He lifts through his actions, and I'm sure if Scotty Boland, for example, starts bowling round the wicket and straightening up against Ben Stokes, it's not that easy to bat against. So there's that part of it. Bit street fighter, got tattoos. I'd love him in my team any day of the week. Then you've got Pat Cummins, very well educated, very well read, very calm. He's almost like the prince. He's a terrific bloke. He's a generational bowler, and he's fit and he's hungry, and he's obviously got enormous respect within his group, like Ben Stokes. So I just think Pat Cummins, this is the biggest series he's had, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he keeps evolving as captain. It was interesting talking to Scott Boland during the last test, and I asked that question, what's it like having a fast bowling captain? Because they're rare.
Yeah, very.
And he said it's so good because he's so calm, and he's walked in our shoes. He's so calm, and Australia will be under pressure at different points if England keep attacking, to have a fast bowler who's been there and just keeps it calm, and that's his greatest strength. He just keeps it nice and calm, and he'll be well rehearsed, and he'll be ready, and his bowling will be outstanding.
I'll go back to what you said about Pat Cummins, Justin, because I was watching him very closely at the World Test Championship, and I think he completely out-captained Rohit Sharma. I was watching him on the 4th and 5th days when India were chasing that total, and even though India had about 350 runs to win, he did not over-attack. He just had 2 slips in a gully, he had people out in the deep, he gave respect to the batsman. Right, and I think that was one of the reasons why India were not able to get those quick boundaries, that would set them on their way. And of course, he was backed up by his bowlers. And you talk about Scott Boland. I mean, he was absolutely outstanding. To my mind, he was the bowler of that particular test match in terms of his control, the way that he hit that line and length off stump. He is the one who actually, to my mind, destroyed the Indian batting lineup. And but if you looked at the other side, I mean, even though Australia had a lead of, say, about 400 on the fourth day, you still had 3 slips. I mean, I couldn't believe what they were doing, and the bowlers were not bowling to their field. So I think in so many ways, it's not just the captaincy and the field placements and everything else, but your players have got to back you up. And I think that that's what he's got his players to do. And that, to my mind, is the hallmark of a really great captain, that they follow their instructions, bowl to their fields, and that's why you win.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Always looking at the matchups across the side, look at the wicket keepers in both sides, how do they compare? Look at the openers, look at the all-rounder, and Cam Green and what he could do, as to whether Ben Stokes will be fit. And then you look at the spinner, Nathan Lyon versus Moeen Ali, who hasn't played a test match, retired from the format, being recalled. So it's going to be utterly fascinating on that front.
I think that's actually the biggest difference in the series will be Nathan Lyon.
You think?
Yeah, I do. I think he's going to be a huge part of it. And the reason is, one, it's been very dry in England. I know it's earlier in the season, but it's been so dry here. And also, he's a world-class spinner. England do not have a world-class spinner. That's with all due respect to Moeen Ali. They don't have a world-class spinner. He's taken 400 of however many wickets. So that could be a huge part of this series.
It's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds. How have you enjoyed the commentary side of things, JL? Because you were with Jim on the radio and with me on the television over the course of the last World Test Championship. We've worked in Australia together.
I was doing something and they said, how's Uncle Jim going up there? I said, bloody classic. No, so much fun. It's so much fun. And
because you don't have to worry. Is that, you can be at ground and just enjoy it as a fan almost?
Having been a player, and you feel like you're under the pump the whole time, then you become a coach and you feel you're under the pump more, and then you come and commentate. I'm with my best mates.
Has it given you a different perspective on that Amazon Prime documentary that was made when you were still coach? Because you were having cameras following you around everywhere, and I don't know whether you at the time appreciated it or felt that was just people getting in the way, but now you're sort of on the other side of the fence. I wonder what your perspective on that whole film and the documentary is now.
Well, I think when it was over, when Doc, our cameraman, left, it was like a sea breeze through my whole life. Because you imagine, I say it to anyone, I've said this a minute, imagine every day you go to work, and even at home a lot of the time, you got someone filming you. It was a bizarre thing, and it was just a really weird thing. But that said, it ended up in COVID period. That I thought the documentary was a great success, and so that was really good for Australian cricket, for the team. But it was weird. I mean, everywhere you go, you're being filmed, and there was probably 5 or 6 times I said, Doc, you got to leave the room, mate. Like there were some things you don't want on camera, obviously. But overall, it was a good experience. But it just added to the pressure and added to the, I guess, exhaustion of that period.
You kicking the bin, right?
That's gone down in legend.
That's a big moment. Now, at the time, did you say, you got to cut that?
Yeah.
I don't want that.
That's exactly what happened, Jim.
And didn't they convince you it was worth having because you then, being a good boy, picked up the rubbish and put it back in the bin?
Well, as I remember, I haven't got... Ben Stokes is going mad. We have that run out. Yeah. That's the easiest run out in the world. Comes to Nathan, misses it. And now it's 3 runs, and we've just had that stupid review just before that. So he drops the ball. So now I said, that's obviously game over. So I get up, boot the bin, stuff goes everywhere. And at the end of it, the director, this is a month later, he goes, are you happy with I said, well, there's only one scene you've got to take out. He said, what scene? I said, you've got to take the scene out where I kick the rubbish bin. He goes, I said, people think I'm a psycho. You can't have that. He went all silent at the end of it. He goes, no, that's the best scene. I said, what do you mean it's the best scene? There's no way it's all right for you to say it's the best scene. I'm going to look like a monster. I'm kicking the bin and people think I can't control my emotions. He said, yeah, but did you see what you did next? I said, what do you mean what I did next? I said, what did I do next? He goes, you bent down and you picked up all the rubbish. I said, what? He goes, go and have another look at it. He said, you picked up, and so he said, one of your values in the team is humility. He said, there it is right there.
Yeah.
He said, you're walking the talk. I said, oh, okay, no worries. So as it turned out, everyone asked me about the scene kicking the bin.
That's the
I
one.
wanted to knock it out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the sweep shot. It was plumb, and the umpire gave it not out. I still can't believe it. And then I went home that night. It was the worst day of my coaching career, probably the worst day of my whole career. Ben Stokes is the new superhero. And I'm sitting in this little dark room by myself in the little hotel in Leeds.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm on FaceTime to my wife, Sue. And she says, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? She said, what are you drinking? I said, I'm drinking scotch. She goes, darling, you don't drink. I said, I do tonight, darling. It was so bad. I'm drinking scotch by myself. It was like a scene out of a movie. And Ben Stokes has just ruined my life. But that's what happened with the kicking the bin.
JL, Justin, it's been fabulous having you with us on Stumped at the wonderful setting that is Lords. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your time in the UK.
So much fun. Thanks, Ali.
Great having you on. So I've been across to the Harris Gardens, which is behind the pavilion, a lovely manicured lawn area, and went there to meet up with the former England captain Claire Connor, who she wears many hats. She is the recent ex-president of the MCC here at Lords, chair of the ICC Women's Cricket Committee. She's currently deputy chief executive of the England and Wales Cricket Board and managing director of England Women's Cricket. And she's an Ashes winner herself. Well, Claire, we've chosen a beautiful day for it. It's good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Ali.
Excellent.
Really excited about the coming couple of months.
Well, we've chosen a very pertinent spot to stand for this chat. This garden is normally full of people on a match day, wearing nice clothes, drinking champagne, a lot of hubbub. They would be standing on this pathway. This is a very significant spot for women's cricket. Tell us why.
Yeah, a lesser known famous spot for women's cricket, but which will become, I think, better celebrated in the next few weeks. So this was where exactly 25 years ago in 1998, we had our own ceremonial creation of a women's Ashes trophy, if you like. So there was nothing, we had been contesting the Ashes, obviously, by then, 1998, for a while, but we didn't have a trophy of our own or anything symbolic of Ashes. So the then president of the Women's Cricket Association that ran the game in this country, Norma Izard, came up with an ingenious kind of little I don't know, fire or stove.
Like a barbecue.
Yeah,
really.
like a barbecue. It was
Little
on some bricks. It was on some bricks, and we had a wok, which I think we got from the Lord's kitchen. And in that wok, we burnt, in the presence of both England and Australia, and obviously I was playing for England then, I was 21. It was my first Ashes, and we burned a miniature bat signed by both teams of the series, and the rule book of the Women's Cricket Association rule book of the time, and it was a strange affair. Obviously, not a massively high-profile event. Roger Knight was here, the then president or chair of the MCC. I can't remember
Secretary,
which.
I think he was, yeah.
And it was our very own special moment. And I suppose, like anything like that, it's what it stands for, but what then the legacy of that has been. So the Ashes that we created were then housed in a beautifully carved wooden ball, small, humble trophy, a little bit like the men's urn, very humble. And that became the trophy that we played for several years until the reinvention of the women's Ashes as the multi-format Ashes in 2013, when that little wooden ball housing the Ashes was then the centrepiece of a slightly more, modern or glamorous trophy that the teams will be competing for not far away at all.
And even that trophy, it symbolises the past with the symbol of the ball in the centre, and then very gleaming, almost stumps, aren't they, sort of pointing up towards the sky,
right,
which I always think says
pointing
something
to
about
the future or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that moment then, that happened in 1998, is actually going to be commemorated now by MCC 25 years on. So anybody coming to Lords they'll walk across this path. They will likely then step on a plaque, which will be planted on, almost in place of the paving slab.
That's right,
where the
yeah.
Ashes were burnt.
And I think there was some debate about where to put the actual plaque, but the view was, let's put it where it actually took place. So I think, as we know about the Harris Garden, champagne flows here pretty freely during major matches. So it will certainly be a place that's celebrated and drenched in champagne, I'm sure.
And that 8th of July is significant because that's when the England-Australia Ashes Women's T20 takes place. place here at Lord's, and that even in itself is significant because, Claire, I mean, you didn't play very much at Lord's for England when you were playing, and it was a very different time for Lord's in the MCC when you did start playing for England.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's really poignant actually, and I'm sure it'd be quite a bit like when we unveiled the Hey Ho Flint Gates this time last year. I'm sure it'll be yet another sort of moment for reflection and to think about how the game's changed, and particularly MCC embracing women's cricket in such kind of visible, high-profile ways. I mean, I played for England for 10 years and only played at Lord's 3 times. And the first time I played here, I was young. I was just turned 20, I think, or maybe 21 in 1997, and we played against South Africa. And it was when women weren't allowed in the long room. So, if you think about how times have changed since then. Certainly, fast forward those sort of 25 years or so to see what we're seeing now. We've just announced that Lord's will host a women's international match every year for the next 7 years, so that's locked in. It's been an incredible kind of adventure, really, and of course you always look back and you think, if we could have only pressed fast forward a little bit quicker, but we are where we are, and we're in for an amazing summer and hopefully a brilliant day here on the 8th of July.
Do you think that your tenure as MCC president, you were the first female president in the history of MCC, do you think that you were able to play a big part in fast-forwarding some of these conversations? Because I know when we last had you on Stumped was in fact just before you were beginning your presidency, and you said that the sort of gender parity part was really significant for you.
Yeah, I hope I've played a small part in that through sitting in meetings and talking to lots of people and having some influence, hopefully, combined with my ECB role. I think what we're seeing now, we've got with the 100 and that sort of gender-balanced cricket competition, with the fact that Lord's, is hosting the first venue this summer to host men's and women's Ashes cricket in the same summer. We've made some really significant changes to the membership applications process here for MCC, which, as you know, from going through the process, and I know, it has been quite an onerous process in years gone by. It's now paperless. It's all done online. Members can propose. I think they can propose 2 candidates as long as one is female. So some interventions like that, hopefully, are making a real difference. We've seen in the last 6 months 24% of all membership applications for the club are from women. So hopefully, we're taking steps towards a more sort of gender balanced environment here and for the game more broadly.
Well, back to the cricket that will be played here in the summer. If I had to ask you for your favourite memory of Lord's or of Ashes, what would you go for?
I think there would be 2. So the first chance to play here myself, but I think probably the overall highlight would be 2017
World Cup final.
Yeah, World Cup final. You were on air. I think you called the winning moment.
Yeah, it remains a career highlight for me.
Even. I was here really early that morning. I think 7 o'clock or something, to do some sort of early media, and to see the ground start to fill up and become full. And to see Lord's full for a Women's World Cup final, and obviously for the result to go as it did, sort of against the odds with the way the game was poised. Again, it was just the most magical day. We had Eileen Ash at the age of 102, I think, at the time, ringing the bell. Some of the greats of the women's game over the years, people who've, everybody's sort of friends and family, and also this, critically, this sort of young new audience of families and young boys and girls watching women's cricket on such a high-profile stage for the first time, really.
Well, it's great to speak to Claire Connor. Sonny, although I imagine, though, if you were following that final from the Indian perspective, you'd have come away with a little bit of a different feeling.
Well, absolutely. I was listening to what you were saying about that fantastic win here in 2017, and I happened to be at that point of time sitting in a restaurant in Sri Lanka and watching the game. And just before that, Harmanpreet Kaur had scored that fantastic century against Australia and knocked Australia out. And there we were, 190 for 3 or something. And another 30 runs to get with 7 wickets. And they just completely imploded. As an Indian avid spectator and follower of cricket, your heart sort of doesn't take it very well. So I think that's the one big hurdle that India have to cross, both in the women's and the men's game, that holding your nerve at the death. How can you actually do that? And that, to my mind, is such a big mental thing. It's not skill, it's not anything else. It's just up there in the mind.
Well, it keeps you coming back for more, doesn't it? That is all we've got time for on this week's Stump. Thank you to Sunil Gupta and to Jim Maxwell, and of course to Justin Langer and all of our guests, and to Lords in the MCC for hosting us here for a very special Stump. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.